Hi there, this is Linda and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be putting together days 10, 11, and 12 in my 2024 December daily. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so let's start with just trying to figure out what my plan is. And so last time that I was on here, I put together 7, 8, and 9. So 9 ends with the back of this mug swap. And I have this scalloped smaller page here. And so I'm gonna work on the back of that. I originally thought I was gonna do my wrapping paper, and I did actually do some wrapping on day 10, but another story kind of popped out to me that I wanted to tell. So I'm going to move the wrapping paper story possibly to day 15. I'm gonna just write it there. And then, so for day 10, let's see, I have some stuff here that I prepped for these days. So the first one for day 10, I printed this picture. And this was partially prompted by a story that Allie did in her album, talking about how dark it is in December and how the twinkle lights really help with that. And that is something that I've always kind of felt, but never really put into words. So I grew up in much further south in the United States in a warmer climate. Now as an adult, I live in upstate New York. It is super cold and super dark this time of year, and it's really rough. And the twinkle lights of December definitely help, especially on these long days like the 10th, where I get to the office and leave the office when it's dark outside. So I wanted to tell that story. I took this photo of my tree actually that morning before I left for work, and everything's dark except the tree. So I thought that this was a perfect image to kind of tell the story about the darkness. So I'm just gonna make a note of that here. So I'm gonna put this on the back of day 9 to do day 10. And then I have pulled this transparency out when I was working in the last section of pages, and I was thinking I wanted this to be a little insert. So I want to put my journaling on here. And the other thing I pulled out was this pattern paper. So I had planned originally to cut these out and create like a little strand of ornaments, and I kind of want them to be free flowing. I'm not entirely sure yet how I'm going to make that happen, but I've been thinking about it. So my plan, I think, is going to have them like hang on here somehow. And then I'm going to do some typed journaling, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to use all of my typewriter or if I want to do the typed journaling on the computer. But either way, I'm going to type up some journaling. I'm leaning towards the computer because that way I can edit it and make it like a full block of text. And then I'm going to put that on here and find a way to adhere these lights either onto the photo or this, and maybe put like my number right here or something in this dark space. So that'll be day 10. And then for day 11, I'm going to use this page which was probably the only like true foundation page that I made this year, because I knew I was gonna need something like that. So I'm gonna use this to tell the story of little joys of the season. And I pulled this joy word out. I had planned it for another spread, but if you watch my foundation pages, my plans were just in pockets, so I can move things around. I don't have to use them as initially planned if I have another idea. But my thought is I'm gonna put the joy here on the back of this and probably add some words that say like little pieces of joy and put my number on top of here. And then I'm gonna type my stories and put them all in here behind each of these, so you can kind of swing them open to read the little bits of joy that I'm finding in this season. So it's gonna be a photoless story. And then for day 12, I'm working on the back of this. And I was super inspired by what Allie did for her day 12. And when I was planning this out, I hadn't seen her put together her day 12 yet. I just saw what she did to prep for this page during prep day. So she was using this page to do a recap of highlights of the year. And she did end up doing stories about her dog or photos of her dog throughout the year. Because I just watched that video this morning while I'm filming this, or before I'm filming this. But I had planned this out yesterday, and my thought was I'm going to cut this down the middle so that, because she did it as a flip out, And I could definitely do that and make it a flip out here as on just this one side here, but I want it to be a full across the spread. So I'm gonna cut it down the middle, and there's gonna be some extra space here. I think I'm gonna put maybe like a title or something. And then this side, I think it'll just be a little bit smaller, which is fine because I printed a picture for day 13, which I'm not gonna do on this video, but I'm gonna use that for sizing to figure out exactly how big to make this page. And then what I'm doing is I printed a photo to highlight something from every month this year, except for December, because December is still ongoing. And really the highlight is the holidays, I think. I'm gonna put a 12 in place of the December photo, and then I'm gonna put my other 11 photos, and I'm gonna add a little typed word to kind of explain what the highlight was, and probably a number for the month. And then I saw Allie had pulled this out when she was putting hers together, and I was thinking that this might be a good way to add a title to this. I'm not entirely sure how I want to do that, but I want to use this because it's dated. And if I don't use it, I will never use it. So I'm thinking maybe I could add like a tab and like cut out this heart, make it flip up. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to work on putting all of these together today and get this put together on this video. So let me just write this in here. So 12 was highlights of the year. And then I'm just gonna kind of take stock here. So day 13 was a craft day with some of my friends. Day 14 is cookie baking. 15 is gonna be wrapping paper. My New York City trip got canceled, so I'm not actually gonna go to the city at all this year, which is a little disappointing, but also good because it's been very busy. But I do need to do a work update. I do have my work holiday party this day, so I might do my work update on that day because I probably won't have a photo from the party, but I can definitely use that as a jumping off point to tell that story. We haven't really had a good snow day yet, so I haven't documented that. I really like the idea of doing like my reads as a recap. I want to go visit my daughter at Starbucks and take a picture of her working, so I'll probably do that sometime next week. And yeah, that's pretty much it that I really want to get in here, which gives me some space to add in a few other stories that just pop up during the day. Holiday media too, like movies. I've only watched one Christmas movie so far, but I still have, a little bit of time. I have a week and a half until Christmas, so I might start watching those a bit more in the next few days. I'm also thinking I like having a little bit of this space to come up with ideas, but I did kind of want to share something that has kind of popped out to me, and it might be just because of the way I'm filming these and I want to get them shared on YouTube during the month so that I can share inspiration, because that is part of the motivation to me to finish this project. I love it. I have so much fun making it, but if I make myself accountable to you guys, that will keep me actually crafting and putting it together as opposed to procrastinating and maybe working on other things and then losing steam with the project. So because I've been so accountable, sometimes I'm coming up with my stories before that day actually happens. And so some of these stories, most of these stories were things that weren't actually prompted on that specific day, but just happened generally around that time. The only one that I think that was really prompted on the day was day 10. The rest of these were just things that have happened, like the mug swap happened this month. I got my mug from my Secret Santa sometime during this week. My mug organizer came, I want to say on the 2nd. So like things weren't happening on specific days. I was just documenting them, but it's something from the season. So I feel like this year I'm kind of shifting from 25 days to 25 stories, which is fine. Some of them are actually happening on that day, but like the craft day with my friends and the cookie baking, those are actually happening on those days. But I'm not as rigid about that as I have been in the past. And that's just something I wanted to share in case you are feeling kind of hung up, like that you need to do things on just specific days because that's when it happened, or if you have multiple things happen on one day and nothing another day, it's okay. Just tell the story on the wrong day. It doesn't really matter in the end. What you want is an album full of your holiday stories. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and start getting these put together. Okay, so this project ends up taking a lot longer than some of my other projects. I think with December Daily, more than other things, I really like to just slow down and play with products. Not that I don't like to do that the rest of the year or that I don't do that in other projects, but sometimes I'm more focused on getting the story told and getting the project completed. Even though I'm still enjoying the process, it's more about, wanting to have a completed story told as opposed to just playing with products. For December Daily, I'm focused more on the products than the stories than I usually am. I still am focused on the story, of course, but the products are kind of guiding some of what I'm doing. So you will see that in this video as I do things that seem very tedious and time consuming, but ultimately I'm super happy that I took the time to do them. You can also see that I am batch processing my pages, which is something that I do with most of my projects and something I've talked about before if you've watched my videos before, but it does make getting projects done more manageable if you have limited time. And essentially what I mean by batch processing is I am doing a couple of days at a time. And you saw earlier in this video that I printed all of my photos for days 10, 11, and 12 at once. I planned out the pages first, then I went to my computer and I selected photos, I edited them, and I printed them. And I cropped them all out and have that base of products and photos kind of sitting there. And now I'm focused on putting together day 10. Once I'm done with day 10, I'll be able to flip straight to day 11 and then day 12 and put those together without going back to the computer. Although I do end up going back to the computer to do some typing for day 10, but generally I don't have to do that. I've done all of the photos at once, and I use a similar process when doing Project Life. I will print my photos for multiple weeks at a time just because it makes the entire process a little bit faster. And it's easier when you're in that headspace to, print and edit photos for 3 spreads at once rather than just one. And then when you move to your desk to create, you have all of those photos ready and it's easier to get the page put together. It also works really well if you have a lot of interruptions in your crafting because you're able to kind of do all the computer stuff first at one point in time. And then when you're actually putting the page together, it doesn't take as long because the photos are already printed. Anyways, back to what I'm actually doing here, which you can tell probably is taking me forever. This is sped up more than double speed. I think I have it at 4 times speed. And it does look like it's pretty tedious, but this was something I was so excited to do. This was my initial thought when I saw this paper. And I'm so happy that it's working out and it comes out the way that I really liked. So essentially what my plan is, I'm cutting each of these little light bulbs out completely, and then I'm adhering them back to back with one that is the same color. The pattern in the circle repeated itself, so I cut it down the middle so that I could cut them out one at a time, or 2 at a time that matched and adhere those back to back. There happened to be like a few at the end that didn't have a matching one, but I just paired them with the closest that was available. And some of them are not the same on both sides, but that's okay. But essentially what my plan is going to be is once I have all of these adhered back to back, so it's a light bulb on both sides, I'm going to run them through my sewing machine to stitch them together into like a strand of lights. How I'm going to do that, you'll see in a few minutes when I'm finished with cutting them out, is I'm going to tape the bulb part of these down with some washi tape, and then I'm going to adhere that to some scratch paper so I can run it through my sewing machine, connecting the black part of the bulb. So the part of the bulb that would be connected to the wire. And there will be a gap between each of these lights where my sewing machine will just create a thread. I have white thread in my sewing machine at this moment, and I feel like that worked fine. I could have replaced it with green or whatever I would have wanted to string my lights, but white worked perfectly well for what I'm going for. And so once it's done, you will see I have a strand of lights that are hanging from thread. And I'm going to go ahead and put some more music on as I finish up this process, and I will pop back in here and there on this video as I have something to say, just like I've been doing on the rest of my December daily process videos. I'm hoping that you enjoy this process. Okay, so here you see my completed strand of Christmas lights. I had kind of hoped that it would make more than it did, but I definitely could have used the digital paper to make as many as I wanted, but it was quite a time-consuming process to cut all of those out, so I was happy to just use what I had here. I had gone over to my computer and printed out a block of text to have my journaling about what I was thinking about with the darkness and the twinkle lights, and I wanted to do that typing on my computer so that I could edit it and have it and really focus on my writing. So I am someone who writes a lot. I write a lot for my day job as an attorney, which is a different style of writing, but still stylized writing. And I really enjoy writing. Sometimes when I'm working on my projects, I don't really focus on the journaling, but other times I really am focused on having my journaling be kind of the guide of the story. And that's really the focus of this spread, I think, is this journaling here. And so what I'm trying to decide now is kind of what am I going to put on the back of this? Because this is a transparency and day 11 is on the back, I'm going to be able to see through it. So I'm thinking I want a pattern paper that's going to be shown through the back of this transparency that will shine through to the next day where I'm going to use that joy word. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about here. And so I'm going to end up using this red star paper to back my journaling. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is work on attaching my strand of lights. So I considered putting it on my photo, but I ultimately decided I wanted it adhered behind my journaling. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using some washi tape to adhere the edges of the strand of lights to the back of this white cardstock that is going to hold my journaling, and they're going to be kind of free flowing. Now I decided that they were a little too free flowing, so what I'm going to do is go over to my stash and grab some embroidery floss, and I'm going to use that to create a little loop to adhere the lights in the middle of the strand. Then I'm going to adhere that other piece of red cardstock to the back so that you won't see all of the messy back on here, and instead you're going to see that pattern paper shining through the transparency. Okay, so once I get this transparency kind of settled how I like it for the right-hand side of my page, I'm going to move on to the other side, but I do need to adhere this red piece on the back, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that even though that is technically part of day 11, but because I'm working on this piece here, I feel like that makes it a little bit more complete, and I will do the rest of the back when I move on to day 11. Now I need to work on fitting day 10, the other side of day 10, the photo, onto the back of that insert. So that insert had the scalloped edge, which I really liked, but I didn't want to have to cut my photo to match that scalloped edge because it would take a really long time and it probably wouldn't be very accurate. So what I decided instead was I took some gold washi tape from my stash and I'm just running it along the back of the edges of my photo. And then that's going to just peek through behind those scallops when I adhere day 9 to the back of day 10. Hopefully that makes sense, but you will see as I do it that it's going to preserve the scalloped edges while having the gold peek through so it doesn't look unintentional to have the other side be squared off. I also think for day 10, it just looks better not having the scalloped edges because it's such a clean, simple photo. I don't want to kind of muck it up with all of those details. Then I just need to decide how to add the number 10. This is something I struggled with a little bit, but I have my pack of 10s that I'm going through to select which one I want to include. And I struggle a bit, but ultimately I end up going fairly simple and not using anything that's in this bag, but instead I'm going to use some stickers on top of one of the wood veneer stars from this year's collection. Okay, so that's going to wrap up day 10, just punching the holes and getting this put into the album. And then I'm going to move on to day 11. So day 11 does not have any photos, and instead I'm telling the story of little moments of joy. Seeing this back as I'm editing it, that red paper with the stars almost looks like it is part of that transparency with the stars because they are the same stars. They're just silver on the back of the transparency and gold on the paper, but I feel like it just works really well. So the joy is going to be on top of the left-hand side with my title, and the right has this foundation page, which I made in September, and I have a process video for this on the Ali Edwards blog. That will be linked in the description box below if you're interested in making a page that looks like this one. So I needed to select a number. I selected a wood veneer 11, which I will work on a little bit later. But for now, I'm working on putting my words. So basically, my plan here was to come up with 9 little moments of joy right now in my life, and include each of them typed on my typewriter Olive behind each of these ornaments. So the ornaments rotate to the side so you can see what's behind them. And because they're transparent, you can kind of see through them as well. So I could have put photos or other things behind these, but I really liked the idea of just having some words behind there, especially because you can kind of see through them. And I feel like with photos, it would get a little too dark and busy, but the words on white paper is pretty simple. So I did speed this portion up a little bit more because it is a little repetitive. And you'll see quite a few of the things that I'm doing are repetitive, but I did want to point out that I am, again, doing some batch processing because I'm going to use my typewriter for day 12, which I'm also going to put together on this video. I thought ahead and I typed out the words that I needed for day 12, in addition to the 9 little moments of joy that I'm doing for day 11. I do end up messing up and not typing one of my moments of joy. I'm not sure how that happened. I had a list of the 9 moments which I had thought up on day 11 in my Hobonichi Cousin journal. And I might share a look at that here in one of these videos in the future. But essentially, my Hobonichi Cousin is my daily journal, and I do have separate videos on my YouTube channel about that if you're interested in seeing it. But during the month of December, because I'm doing December daily, I'm leaving a space on each of the first 25 days for me to journal or add in some notes for my specific story for my December daily. And that's working really well. And I'm very much enjoying that process. But here you can see me typing out those words for day 12. So I do want to read to you guys what the 11 moments of joy are that I selected, because you might not be able to see super well on the video as everything is moving so quickly and they get hidden behind those ornaments. So I ended up selecting working on my cross stitch, which is something I've been doing on and off for years now, but I'm really in the mode of doing it pretty much every evening these days. It's super cozy, just a fun, cozy, relaxing project. Watching Squid Game in prep for season 2. Season 2 is releasing on December 26th, I believe. And I hadn't watched the show when it initially came out, but I decided to finally watch it with my boyfriend who has already seen it. And it was just a great show. So I'm super happy that I did. It was bringing me a lot of joy through these days. Haagen-Dazs chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, which I've been enjoying in the evenings as well after dinner. And let's see, my fuzzy cozy pants from Amazon, which are they are like these ridiculously cheap fuzzy pants, but they are so soft. And I have like 3 different colors, and they're something I've been enjoying wearing around the house on these colder days. My gas fireplace on a cold day. I love flipping on the fireplace in the evenings. Vanilla scones and marshmallow oat milk lattes, something I have for breakfast every day and brings me so much joy. Although I'm not having it for breakfast these days now that I have Christmas cookies, I'm taking a little break from the scones and having some cookies instead, but they still bring me joy. All of my journals and adding to them daily, which is something that brings me so much joy. Sorting a cakes game on my iPad, a stupid time suck game that I'm really enjoying. And then setting up my 2025 craft planner and organizing my projects. I've been working on migrating some of my craft plans into my 2025 craft planner, something that was completely unnecessary and I didn't do in 2024, but now I have craft plans scattered amongst various journals and notebooks. And now that the story kits are ending, I kind of wanted to just get them all in one place. So it's very easy for me to see what else I have to create. And I anticipate doing a lot of creating with those older kits in 2025. So having them in my 2025 planner is just making me ridiculously happy. So while I was going through that, I cropped down all of these words, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere them with rolling adhesive behind each of these ornaments. And then I'm going to heat emboss the 11 with white heat embossing powder. Okay, let's talk about heat embossing because that's what I'm going to do here. If you are new to heat embossing or it's not something you do very much, I'm just going to share my process. So for this one, I am heat embossing this entire wood veneer 11, but you can definitely use stamps or other designs to heat emboss. But because I'm doing the entire thing, I'm just pressing the entire thing on the ink pad, which is Versamark ink. And then I'm pouring my powder on top of it, and then I'm going to just dump the remaining portion of the powder. I just use some scratch paper and I have it in this tray while I'm doing my heat embossing and using my scissors to hold it in place while I use my heat gun. So the tray that I'm using is just an old package from the Becky Higgins page protectors, but any like tray or packaging works really well for this. Cardboard, you don't need to purchase anything. I also have a dryer sheet off to the side because when you use heat embossing with something like a stamp, you sometimes get heat embossing powder that sticks to other surfaces outside of where the stamp is just because of static. So if you rub your surface with the dryer sheet prior to stamping on it, you will have some better results. I didn't do it here because I'm heat embossing the entire front of the 11. So there wasn't a concern with the heat embossing powder sticking anywhere else on the 11. Okay, so that wrapped up day 11. I'm super thrilled with how this one came out. Just had it there in the album for a moment. And now I'm going to work on day 12. So day 12 is on the back of day 11 plus another page. So this is going to be a full page spread. And my plan here is to do 12 days or 12 memories from the year, I guess 11, one from every month prior to December. And I have already printed and cropped those photos. These squares can be 2x2, but I think I did like 1.87 because I wanted just a little bit of the white scalloped edge to show. I'm going to mount these on the back using some gold washi tape just to cover where the holes are, so I'm not worried about punching holes in my squares on the red paper. I'm going to use some white cardstock for the right hand side just to create a base because I need it to be slightly larger than the piece of paper that I'm using for day 12. I eventually am going to adhere a photo to the back of this, but because I don't want to work with my photo just kind of face down on the desk, I'm going to use some white cardstock for now. And I'm just running my gold washi tape there as well so that I'm going to have this on both sides where the holes will ultimately be punched. I'm not going to punch the right hand side until I do day 13, so you won't see me do that on this video, but I will do that on the next one. And then I need to fill that left hand piece of white cardstock before I can finalize this page. But I'm not sure yet what to do with that, so I'm going to work on my squares first. I initially had said in the introduction that I was going to kind of print words to kind of describe the highlight from each month, but I ultimately decided not to do that and instead just print the names of the months because some of the highlights I think would have been too long to put in just like a single word or two, and I felt like this made it more uniform. I also printed the word December because I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted it. When I say printed, but I typed them on my typewriter. But I didn't want to have to pull my typewriter over again to do December if I ultimately decided I wanted to use it. So I just did it anyway, and I'm going to not end up using it in the end. Okay, so while I'm finishing up putting these together, I'm just going to talk through what my highlights were for the year. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen me do all of these if you've been around for the year, but it's so much fun to kind of look back on this overview. So in January, I got new furniture in my living room. I got some new bookcases and a new couch, which I really loved. So that's my photo for January. February, I took a vacation to St. Lucia. March, I completely redid my laundry room. It was plain white walls and just like an empty room. And now it's got a lot of decor and accent wall. It was just so much fun to do. April, we saw the eclipse. We were in like the 95% coverage. So it wasn't a total eclipse for us, but it was close and it was still kind of an adventure. May, I took a trip to Toronto. June, I took a small weekend getaway to Lake Placid. July, I watched the Olympics. August, I went to Europe. So I actually went to 5 different countries and 5 different cities. So the cities that I went to were Berlin in Germany. I went to Prague in the Czech Republic, Vienna in Austria, Budapest in Hungary, and Istanbul in Turkey. But I just chose a photo from Budapest for that day because fitting all of those in there in this small square just wouldn't have made sense. For September, we started our reading room redo. It's not complete, but we did the painting and got bookcases. So it's pretty well done at this point. October, we went to Quebec City. And then November, I didn't really have a big highlight, but I hung out with my friends and I took a day trip with them to Millerton, New York, which isn't really that far from where I live. It's about an hour's drive, but it was a fun little get together. And so that became my highlight for November. After doing all of those, my next plan was to figure out what was going to go in that little space and how to include this 2024 heart. So I spent a lot of time hemming and hawing trying to figure out how to do this. The one thing I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to include the text where I wrote out a year of memories in one of those plastic Avery index tabs on the edge of the 2024 heart. So I knew I wanted to cut out the heart and have it flip open, but I needed to figure out what paper was going to be behind it. So you're going to see me try to figure this out and do a lot of changing and switching it up. But ultimately the plan is for it to flip open. And then on the back of the 2024 heart, I'm going to end up doing a summary of kind of what this page is about and about my year. So I struggled with this a lot, and I left a lot of this footage in because I wanted you guys to see kind of all the back and forth with this. I knew I wanted this heart here to flip open. I knew I wanted that tab on it, but I didn't know what to do behind it. I looked at it without any backing and it felt like you couldn't really see it. The gold, because it was transparent, didn't pop with the busy of grid of all of my photos. So I knew I needed something behind it. I kept trying that green paper, and while it did work well with the dark green behind it, it just didn't work for me. So I was trying the white paper too. And then ultimately I pulled over this one from the kit that says December Memories, and it's black. And that was just perfect. It was a perfect sentiment. It was the perfect color. I was just super happy with it. So I went ahead and adhered my heart right on top of it and then cut out around the paper so that the heart was just backed with this black paper. The tab, what I did for the tab was I cut some of that green paper to create a base for it and adhered my A Year of Memories on it so that it would fit nicely into my tab, and adhered that on the outside edge of the heart. You can see how I'm just attaching that here. And on the back, I'm going to end up covering that at some point with another piece of paper, but that I still haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with the back. So for now, I need to figure out how I'm going to adhere this down. And I ultimately decide to use this black paper and create a strip to go along the edge of here. And then I do put some of my gold washi on it just to give it some contrast with the heart itself. You saw me put together that flip or that flap, and how I did that was I just used some scratch paper so that it was thinner to create my seam, and then I'm lining it with pattern paper on both the front and the back side, the inside, so that it will fold nicely and the weight of the heart will hold it down while it's closed in the album, so we don't have to worry about it kind of popping up, because the heart with the pattern paper, which is thicker, and that transparency is just heavier than this flimsy white paper. Things were not laying perfectly flat though, and part of that was because the backing had all of those brads on it. They were poking out and creating a little bumps behind my pattern. Once everything was adhered down, you couldn't really tell that this wasn't flat, but that is something to keep in mind. And maybe what I should have done is put some like foam or something in there to kind of like suck up, or I don't know what you would even call it, but something between the pages so that the backs of those brads wouldn't stand out. But I don't know how to do that without adding a lot of thickness to the album. So this ended up working. Here you can see me adding that gold washi tape so that there's just something there to hold this in place. And then I'm going to use some red line tape to adhere the 2024 on there. Then I struggle because I need to figure out what to put on the back of that heart. And I do end up doing some journaling with a large Sharpie creative marker, and I hate it. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like how it came out. So I redo it with a pen so that I could actually get more words in there. And I don't love it, but I ultimately leave it because I feel like I've messed with this enough. And just because I don't love that one part of it, I do really love the spread overall. I also wanted to share a little bit about the 12 because I didn't talk through that earlier in the video, but where the spot is for December, so the 12th square, rather than writing in or putting in a photo for December, I used some pattern paper from the kit to just crop it into a square, and that's where I put my number 12. And I thought that was super fun because this is day 12, but that's also December, which is the 12th month. Because I was not entirely sure what to do with that heart, I didn't like the writing, I left it to the side and I'm working on my sampler page. You've seen me work on and off on this all month as I've been putting together my December daily process. If you haven't seen one of my December daily process videos before this one, I talk a little bit more about what this project is in the first process video and in my foundation pages when I set it up. But essentially, I am putting like a nod to each page design wise on each of these little banners, and then I'm going to add some words at the end of the month. So I had a little bit of fun here going back and filling in a few of these gaps. You can see I didn't do all of the months or all of the days as I put them together in the album. Instead, I'm just kind of doing them as I'm inspired. So I finally went back and filled in a day 7 here because I hadn't really thought of what to do before now. And for day 10 for the lights, I used the puffy lights that came in the advent calendar to kind of symbolize the lights, which I thought was super fun. And then for day 12 for this one, I'm using that black pattern paper. I decided to punch my holes because I knew I needed to get that done. So I'm working on that. And then I'm going to go back and finish the 2024 text for day 12. So I did leave a lot of this video footage in here because I wanted you to see how much I struggled with this and how I ultimately left it.
Putting that extra piece of paper on there was a little bit difficult. You can see like it didn't line up perfectly, so I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut off the edges. And I do ultimately add some washi on the back, or I added the washi on the back, but you can see I had to like cut that out just because I didn't like the way the edge looked. So that journaling is not my favorite, but not every piece of every page has to be my favorite. And when this is closed, I have to admit I really love it. So I'm going to give you one final flip of how these come together in the album. So there's day 12 with my flip out. I will punch the right hand side in my next video. I considered adding a star or something, but I just needed to leave it at this point, right? And then you can see I'm flipping back to day 10. Well, there's day 9, day 10 with my ornaments or the lights, day 11 with the ornaments, and day 12. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thank you. Bye.